Think about the last party you went to, or the last work event, or the last family dinner where people actually talked. There was probably that one person, you know who I mean, the one people kept drifting toward, the one whose little corner of the room kept getting more crowded, the one who wasn't the loudest, wasn't the funniest, wasn't even saying anything particularly clever, and yet somehow everyone wanted to be near them. And then there was everyone else, filling silences with weather updates, laughing a little too fast at things that weren't funny, nodding along to conversations they weren't really part of. Maybe that felt familiar. You walked home that night thinking, what do they have that I don't? Here's the thing, you've probably been told of a wrong answer your whole life. You've been told that interesting people have great stories, that they're well-traveled or well-read or naturally funny, that it's a talent, something some people are simply born with. That's not true, and I can prove it, because the most captivating conversationalists I've ever come across, the ones who make every person they talk to feel like the only person in the room, aren't performing. They're not running through a mental checklist of clever things to say. They're doing something much simpler and much rarer. Today I'm going to break it down, step by step. By the end of this, you won't just understand what makes someone magnetic in conversation. You'll know exactly what to do differently starting today. Stay with me until the end, because the last thing I'm going to share is the one shift that makes all the other pieces fall into place. And most people never figure it out. The big misunderstanding. Let's start with the mistake almost everyone makes. When most people feel boring in a conversation, their instinct is to find better material, better stories, more interesting facts, more impressive things to mention about themselves. So they start stockpiling, reading more, traveling more, looking for experiences worth talking about. And none of that is bad, but it's solving the wrong problem. Research out of Harvard found something surprising. When people were asked to rate how much they enjoyed a conversation, the biggest factor wasn't how interesting the other person's stories were. It was how much that person seemed genuinely curious about them. Read that again. Being interested beats being interesting. Every single time. The most magnetic people in a room aren't running a performance. They're running a genuine curiosity. They want to know what you think. They want to understand how you see things. And because of that, they make you feel like the most interesting person in the conversation, which, by the way, makes you like them enormously. That's the trick hidden in plain sight. The fastest way to become interesting is to become genuinely interested. Problem one, you're answering instead of opening. Here's a habit that quietly makes conversations fall flat, and almost nobody notices they're doing it. Someone asks you a question. You answer it. They nod. You wait. They ask another question. You answer that too. And eventually the conversation dies not with a bang, but with a kind of mutual relief. That's called ping pong conversation. One person serves, the other returns, back and forth until someone gets bored and walks away. Interesting people don't play ping pong. They play catch. There's a difference. When someone asks you something, you answer, but then you add something, a detail that opens a door, a small observation, a question of your own that takes the conversation somewhere neither of you expected. Not, I'm fine, how are you? But honestly, this week was strange. I've been thinking about something I can't stop turning over. What do you do when you want to change something, but you're not sure where to start? Suddenly, you're not exchanging information, you're actually talking. And that small shift, from closing answers to opening ones, changes everything about how people experience you. Problem two, you're trying to impress. This one is subtle, because it looks like confidence from the outside. You have a good story, you've done something interesting. You know a thing or two about a lot of topics, so you share it, you mention it, you work it into the conversation when the moment feels right, and people smile politely and move on. Here's why. There's a difference between sharing something because it's genuinely relevant and interesting to both of you, and sharing something because you want the other person to think better of you. People feel the difference. They can't always name it, but they feel it. When you talk to impress, there's a subtle energy of needing something back, a verdict, an approving reaction, and people unconsciously pull back from that energy. It's slightly exhausting to be around. When you talk to connect, to explore an idea, to find out what the other person thinks, to go somewhere together in the conversation, people lean in. because now they're not an audience. Now they're a participant. Ask yourself honestly next time you're talking, am I sharing this to add to the conversation or to add to how they see me? One of those builds connection. The other quietly kills it. Problem 3, you're asking dead-end questions. What do you do? Where are you from? How long have you been here? These questions aren't wrong. They're just ceilings. They have one answer, a short one, and then they're done. Interesting people ask questions that have no ceiling. Questions the other person has never quite been asked before. Questions that make them pause for a second, not out of confusion, but out of genuine thought. Not what do you do, but what part of your work actually surprises you. Not where are you from, but what do you miss most about where you grew up. Not how was your weekend, but did anything happen this week that you're still thinking about. These questions do something powerful. They signal that you don't want the surface version of this person. You want the real one. And almost nobody ever asks for that. When someone feels like you're actually curious about who they are, not their job title, not their weekend plans, but who they actually are, they open up in ways they weren't expecting. And afterward, they walk away thinking about what an incredible conversation that was, even if you barely spoke. The real secret: have a life worth bringing. Now here's the piece most people skip, and it's the most important one. Everything we've talked about, the questions, the openness, the curiosity, those are real skills. They work. But they work best when they're coming from a person who actually has something going on inside. And here's the honest truth. If your entire life is work, phone, sleep, repeat, you won't have much to bring to a conversation. Not because you're boring, but because you haven't given yourself anything to be curious about. The most naturally interesting people are almost always people who are genuinely curious about the world outside the conversation. They read things that have nothing to do with their job. They try things they're not good at yet. They have opinions they've actually thought about. They've been somewhere recently, not necessarily another country, but somewhere new in their own mind. Curiosity is contagious. When you're genuinely lit up about something, anything, people feel it. It doesn't have to be impressive. It just has to be real. So go find something that makes you genuinely curious. A topic, a skill, a question you can't fully answer yet. Not so you have better material, but so you become a person with real inner life. And that, more than any technique, is what makes someone magnetic. Because here's the final truth. People don't remember the most interesting things you said. They remember how they felt when they were talking to you. Did they feel heard? Did they feel seen? Did the conversation go somewhere neither of you expected? That's what stays with people. That's what makes them want to find you again at the next party. Not your stories, not your jokes, just the rare, quiet gift of making them feel worth talking to.